There are nights that will never be forgotten, nights where darkness not only obscures the light but also reveals terrifying secrets that we could never imagine. When we seem to be safe, nightmares can suddenly strike, turning peaceful moments into hours of fear and tension. In the 3 stories below, you will follow the characters through terrifying nights, where every sound, every shadow contains unexplainable threats and obsessions. Prepare yourself to face your deepest fears, when the safety of sleep becomes a luxury and the horrors never go away. Story 1: Prank Call. One weekend night when I was 15, my best friend, Anthony, invited me to his house for the night. Anthony's parents were going to be away all weekend, and he wanted us to have a night full of fun and freedom. I rode my bike to Anthony's house and put the bike in the backyard, then walked inside. As soon as we entered the house, we dived into the video games Anthony owned, from FIFA to Call of Duty. Popcorn and snacks were scattered across the floor as we laughed and competed. As the night gradually fell, we did not feel tired but continued to enjoy every moment. After playing the game for a while, we decided to switch to watching a movie we hadn't finished watching yet. But boredom gradually made us think of making some prank calls to add more fun to the night. At around 10 p.m., Anthony began making prank calls to pizza places, but nothing special happened. When it was my turn, I decided to try my luck with some random numbers, hoping someone would pick up the phone. My 4th call was finally connected, but from the very first moment, something unusual happened. On the other end of the line was a deep and rough voice, responding with a vague yeah instead of a greeting. The giggling behind me made me feel confused and stumble mid-sentence, while Anthony stood next to me with a pale, worried look on his face. The tension increased as I tried to continue the call. The voice on the other end remained calm, but seemed increasingly suspicious. I said in a serious tone, "Hello, sir, can I borrow one of the wheels from your car? What is your name?" "I call myself Bob, hope everything will be okay." But when the man on the other side asked, "Why aren't you Anthony?" a cold feeling ran down my spine. Things got scarier when I realized that this man seemed to know Anthony better than I thought. I felt like a heavy brick hit my head when I realized the danger in the conversation. No longer able to keep calm, I immediately hung up, not daring to continue chatting with that stranger for another second. Anthony and I both felt an overwhelming sense of fear. I asked Anthony what was going on, but he just shook his head, his expression unable to hide his confusion and worry. He said the information on the caller ID showed his father's name, which was completely inexplicable. We immediately went to the computer to find out how strangers could know Anthony's name just by phone number. Personal information websites did not provide clear answers, and similar questions on Yahoo did not help us find a solution. The feeling of confusion and fear increased as we realized that there was no reasonable explanation for this. Anthony worried that if he informed his father about the incident, the situation could become more serious. He was afraid that someone might be watching us, and so didn't want to further disrupt the situation. In the end, we decided to continue with our plan, sleeping in the living room. Even though we tried to continue watching the unfinished movie, the worry about the strange phone call never left our minds. The feeling of insecurity is always present, as if there is an unwanted presence silently watching us from the darkness, making every small noise or strange light startle us. Story 2: Mysterious Man. As the night grew late, a feeling of insecurity enveloped the space like a cold wave. Anthony and I sat silently in the living room, the weak light from the TV reflecting on our faces. Suddenly, A strange sound shattered the silence. The front storm door opened with a loud noise, followed by the sound of the door handle turning violently. The creaking sound of the door echoed throughout the space, as if an invisible force was trying to break it. Anthony immediately turned off the TV. The light in the room immediately disappeared, leaving only dense darkness. I hurriedly moved to the window, my eyes tense, trying to look out to find out the source of the sound. When I raised the curtain, a terrifying image appeared before my eyes. A tall man standing outside. His eyes were cold and emotionless, like two dull stones. I felt panic rising inside me and immediately pulled down the curtain, turning to look at Anthony with an expression full of worry and fear. We ducked into the kitchen, where light from a small light bulb bounced off the surrounding walls. The sound of the gate opening to the backyard sounded near the kitchen window, and I realized I had forgotten to close the back door. Panic surged through me, and Anthony urged me to go and close the door. I hurried through the hallway leading to the back door, but as I approached the door, I saw a figure standing outside, right in front of the door. The man didn't seem to notice my presence, but his eyes were still like a cold snake, staring intently into the house. When this person opened the door and walked in, I sneaked back into the kitchen and motioned for Anthony to follow me upstairs. We moved as quietly as possible, our feet making no noise, and pulled Anthony's door closed carefully so as not to make any noise. We lay close under Anthony's bed, where a sheet covered us, completely shielding us from the light. Downstairs began to make strange sounds. Doors opened one by one with tense creaks, and the man's footsteps approached the stairs. Feeling that person's presence right outside the door made my heart beat so hard that it felt like it was about to explode. I had to put my hand over Anthony's mouth to keep him quiet. In the heavy silence, it felt like time passed very slowly, and I felt like no one was in the room anymore. When the door opened, I could hear Anthony's breathing becoming heavy, footsteps crunching, and coat hangers rubbing together as the man searched around. The footsteps moved closer to the bed and stopped. It felt like my heart was being squeezed in my chest, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I gently removed my hand from Anthony's mouth and whispered in his ear, asking if we could run away. As Anthony was about to answer, a haunting and horrifying scream interrupted. The scream echoed in my ears like a nightmare. I saw Anthony being pulled out from under the bed, and despair filled me. I looked around, looking for anything that could be used as a weapon, and finally I grabbed a screwdriver that was on the nightstand. With all my body strength, I rushed to the man and stabbed the screwdriver into his back. The man let go of Anthony and let out a scream of pain, giving us a precious chance to escape the house. Running out into the street could cause us to be spotted too easily and take too long to get to the neighbor's house. So we rushed into the forest, seeking shelter among the dense bushes. I felt the man's eyes following us from afar as he walked outside, looking around the backyard. As his gaze scanned the forest, I felt my heart beat faster, but fortunately the darkness kept him from seeing us. When the man turned the other way, I crouched low behind the bushes, trying to keep myself and Anthony quiet. Anthony, alarmed, said the man was approaching and we had to run now. We rushed through the forest, our feet stepping on dry leaves that crunched on the ground, revealing our sounds. Anthony tripped over an obstacle and I quickly bent down to help him, while we hoped we had gotten far enough. However, after only 20 seconds, the footsteps were almost chasing us, getting closer and closer, and we lay face down on the ground, listening to the sounds from behind. After a while, the footsteps gradually faded away, and we waited until we could no longer hear them. When we felt safer, we turned back toward the house, hastily running past the sound of falling leaves and our heavy breathing. When we returned to the backyard, we remembered to close the door after this one and prepared to call the police. Anthony kept in contact with the police while I patrolled the back windows, checking to see if anyone was still outside. The night was too dark to see clearly, but I decided to turn on the backyard lights. Immediately, I saw the silhouette of a man standing in front of a large tree in the distance before he turned off the light and turned back into the forest, disappearing from sight. That was the last time Anthony and I saw that man. Even though 5 years have passed and nothing similar has happened, we still cannot forget the feeling of fear and insecurity from that night. I wonder if there is any connection to the previous prank call, but we may never know the real cause. The story of that terrible night still haunts me and Anthony, becoming an indelible memory in our minds. Story 3. A terrifying night at Paul's house. That night, the atmosphere in the house became so heavy and tense that I felt as if I was living in a nightmare. My wife is constantly criticizing, and her criticism feels like a slap in my face. She constantly criticized me, from the fact that I forgot to lower the toilet seat to other trivial issues. Her shrill voice cut through the air like a sharp knife, making me unable to bear it any longer. In exhaustion, I called my best friend, Paul, for help. Paul invited me to his house, saying I could stay as long as I wanted. I promised him that I just needed one night away from the frustration and stress at home. Paul lives in a huge house which my wife often criticizes because she thinks all my friends have nicer houses than us. Paul's house has 3 guest bedrooms, but only one is in use. Paul very kindly let me stay in one of them. When I arrived at Paul's house, I saw that his house was large and somewhat strange. The guest bedrooms are next to each other, while Paul's room is across the hall. This arrangement seems unreasonable, but I don't mind too much. I just want to find a quiet place to relax. After I settled into the living room, I started hearing strange sounds from the room next door. These noises are not disturbing at first, but quickly become annoying. Strange sounds like dragging, crashing, and other noises of unknown origin. I decided to check and tried to open the door, but the door was locked. I went back to Paul's room and asked him about these noises. Paul said that he often locks the door because he leaves valuable personal belongings in the room. He told me to just go back into the room and if the noise continued, to come back to him. I did so, but after half an hour the noise didn't stop making me feel nervous. I suddenly heard a light knock on the wall and a faint voice, as if someone was trying to call me. I went back to Paul's room. This time he was very serious. He took the key and unlocked the 2 doors of the next room. As we entered, a cold wind hit our faces, and I felt the abnormality immediately. The window was wide open. The wind blew, messing up everything in the room. The wardrobe was wide open, filled with empty bags, and there were strange marks on the bed, as if someone had slept on it. Paul's butcher knife lay on the floor, covered in blood, and all of his valuables were gone. Panic prevailed when Paul suddenly rushed into the hallway. I kept up with him as he inspected the 3rd guest bedroom. When Paul opened the door, a dark shadow rushed out the porch window. We decided to run out the back door, hoping to catch up with the stranger. We ran outside and into the garden, but the stranger had disappeared. The scene in the 3rd guest bedroom was even more horrifying. The bedsheets were covered in blood. The dresser contained butcher knives with bloodstains, and all of Paul's belongings had been taken. We feel as though homeless people or dangerous drug addicts have been living in Paul's house for some time without his knowledge. Paul even mentioned that his food disappeared quickly, and his emaciation was now even more apparent. The incident that night reminded me of a scary memory from when I was a child. When I was 10 years old, I used to spend the night at my best friend, Jordan's house. Jordan's house had a huge basement where we played video games until 1 a.m., then slept on the couch without any rest. One night, after falling asleep easily, I suddenly woke up in the middle of the night, realizing the TV was still on and the screen was blank. The dim light from the TV made me notice a tall object standing in the far corner of the basement, almost reaching the ceiling. I couldn't describe exactly what it was, but its appearance made me feel scared. When the TV turned off, the light almost completely disappeared, and I felt a strong wave of fear come over me. I closed my eyes and lay motionless, not daring to move. I don't remember how I fell back asleep, only that I woke up to a horrifying scream from upstairs. Jordan and I ran up the stairs and found his mother crying and his father overturning everything in the room. There was no trace of anyone else in the house, no signs of entry or exit. Jordan later said that his mother did not like to repeat the incident, but she saw a tall, dark figure standing next to their bedroom door. Even though many years have passed, the feeling of fear from that night still haunts me and Jordan. It's a scary memory that we can't forget, and I can't help but wonder if there's any connection between the scary events of the past and the present. These stories are not only scary events, but also living witnesses to the fragility of the sense of security. In these dark nights, where secrets lurk and mysterious presences constantly threaten, we realize that sometimes nightmares are not just products of imagination, but memories, indelible. As the night gradually passes and the light of dawn begins to glimmer, we still cannot forget the feelings of confusion and fear that haunt our minds. Memories of terrifying nights will forever be an inseparable part of the lives of those who experienced them.